Thank you for visiting all of our friends on YouTube. This one also goes out, link on Instagram. That's new for us. And of course, all the Prolific Press poets. And we're going to send this out to the list when we're done. This is Glenn Lyvers with the Prolific Press Poets. It's the February 2023 poetry reading event. And before we kick off, I'm going to read a quick piece. We're going to just talk about this for a couple of minutes. Boy, we have a good group here today. So let me share my screen so you can see what I see. Now, this is a poem that I wrote a little while later. It won this award, and so I just want to use this as an example, and then we'll talk about it if that's okay. It's called "Leaving Mother Chechnya," and it was written according to a writing prompt for a competition. My wife's arms ached the night after the orphanage turned us down. No ties to our culture, no way for the baby to learn the ways of Mother Chechnya. The orphaned girl with the scars may die, probably, is the Chechen translation. And my wife sobs, rubbing her pale belly, becoming an inconsolable, quavering heap on the sterile bathroom floor, her womb a starving mouth waiting to be fed. And she tells me she can feel it now, rolling like an empty stomach, vacuous in a way I can never fill, withering by the hour, waiting for our plane. Every or every foreign second feels like falling. And so it's this super personal poem, right? And and it's such a tender sort of moment. And as poets, sometimes we put on these hats that we wear, right? We imagine a character or a point of view that we're writing from, and then these things just come out of us, you know?
Yeah.
And so if we're lucky, it happens some days it happens. And you know, we can write these award-winning pieces that, you know, where does it come from? But the problem that I want to talk to you guys about today is when you write this personal sort of persona poem, you know, you imagine your mother or your father suffering or something, and you just really start feeling those things, and it all bubbles up, and this thing comes out of you. But maybe it's not true. Maybe what you wrote isn't a true thing. It's just it's a poem that you wrote, right? And it might be really good, but it might be about a one-legged, you know, guy named Pistol Pete that you dreamed up. And then you put it out there in the world, and suddenly you start getting, I mean, this happens to me. So this is why I wanted to ask this question. It's just happened to me this week. Suddenly I start getting these emails from people saying, "Oh, I'm sorry for what you're going
Yeah.
through," right? Anybody have this happen? This
Yeah.
sort of spillover where your friends and family start trying to comfort you based on this fictitious poem that you wrote?
Yeah, that has happened.
It happens.
How do you deal with that? What do you anybody have any good?
Well, well, Glenn, I can speak to that a little bit. I've written for many years with the Amherst Writers and Artists out of Amherst, Massachusetts, and Pat Snyder, who is gone from us now, but she began the entire thing. And there's a formula that we use in our writing, and one of it is what gets said in the room stays in the room. But one thing that we use all the time is we treat everything as fiction. And so we never make mention of those things that we, in your mind, in your heart, with the people you write with, you may know that to be true, but when we respond to it, we respond to everything as fiction. I don't know if that's something that you can put out there, but that's
Yeah.
the way we work it.
I think that we're in better territory when we're writing for each other. As poets, we all get it, right? But as friends and family and outsiders coming to read our work, right? How do they discern what's real? I mean, it kind of takes away from it, right? If you said this isn't a real story, you can't do
Mm,
that.
no, no, that's true. But then again, your friends and family perhaps know those things about you,
Yeah.
and you're writing through them. You're writing through your pain. They would know that, I would suspect. Like we don't. I read it, and my first reaction was, oh my gosh, poor Glenn and his wife. That was my first reaction. But the writer in me says, treat it as fiction, Gloria. you know.
Yeah.
Glenn,
Yeah.
several of the workshops, excuse me, several of the workshops I took early on about poetry, the workshop poets that said if somebody would read a poem and they would critique it and criticize some of the stuff and ask them to change it, and they'd say, "Well, this is really what happened," and they'd say, "Well, really, what happened doesn't necessarily make good poetry." So if it has to be slightly fictionalized, do it in order to make the poem an experience that people will read and appreciate.
I have lived that moment in um, upper level writing classes where that really happened, where this girl said, but that's what happened, and where do you go? Where do you go with that, especially when you're dealing with students? Edward, do you have something to say?
I did two things. The point was touched on earlier. Fiction writers themselves don't have a problem with first person narration because you assume it's not actually the author, or if it is, it's rather tangential. And I find I write some intensely personal stuff, but it has more to do with my makeup and my emotions, and not with incidents in my life. The incidents in my life I tend to mask as second or third person kinds of things. I don't. I'm not much for public confession.
Yeah. Well, I think it's true that I told you, probably told many of you in this room, stop, pull back on the I. I used to say that so much because people write poetry with the I did this, I did that, and suddenly it sort of loses its zing, right? But then there are other times when the speaker sort of shines through. So we write about these things. Everybody in this room, I think I could say, writes very well. So you write about things in a relatable way. You write about things purposefully so that the reader imports all of this to it, right? You want to stir them up so they bring what's familiar to them to your work, and they sort of meet you in the middle to create this feeling. Sean.
Thank you, Glenn. As it happens, tonight I'm going to be working on an interview. They send you a bunch of questions. It's a literary interview. And one of the questions is about this notion that Haibun, which I specialize in, should be written based on direct experience. So the way I'm trying to tackle it is I'm going, well, what does experience mean?
Yeah.
Because when I have a dream,
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but when I wake up, if I dreamt I was running down a long tunnel made of ice cream, that's as real to me as any other dream I ever have.
Yeah.
And this second, so what I'm trying to say, another thing from the Japanese perspective with regard to haiku and so on, they're always puzzled about Westerners talking about haiku being in the moment, because their take is, but the whole of the past is in every moment.
Right.
And come to think of it, so is the future. And then there is no time. And there's no spaces and time are illusions. So yeah, everything is in the moment, but there is nothing but moment. There's only a moment anyway. So without getting too complicated about it, but I think the key thing, where somebody just alluded to this, but I think it was Dennis that mentioned experience. So I think what we're trying to do, not just as writers, but as artists, is we're trying to deliver experience to people, but not necessarily, truth has nothing got to do with it, because essentially, ironically, everything we write is its own truth. It mightn't be good writing or it might be bad writing, but when you use your imagination is true. I mean, it's all true. So this notion of truth and not truth based on whether it's a fact or not, facts have nothing got to do with it. What are facts anyway? So I give the example that I was thinking of yesterday. If somebody from a completely different culture to Ireland visits Ireland and stands in a graveyard with all the Celtic crosses, which are so typical, and they see these things, I wonder what they see. Because as a person born and bred here, what we see is very different because we've got a cultural perception of what these represent and what they mean to us. And it may be that that particular Celtic gravestone is over one of my neighbor's graves. So I know the person is buried underneath it. So it's all those layers that we're dealing with. So the way I deal with it is what family and friends have to say about anything I write. I just say to them, oh, it's nothing to do with me. And I think that's the truth. I think that to write successfully, it's got to be nothing got to do with you at all. It may happen, you can draw on your own experience, inverted commas, but in a sense, it's all about what the reader requires, not what we require. The closer we get to that position where we're writing outside ourselves, the more people we connect with, if that makes sense.
I think you may have just titled one of my future collections, Nothing to Do with Me. Sounds like a great, doesn't it sound like a great title for a book?
Yeah, I claim innocence as a writer. I scratch my head. So well, I don't know what all of that stuff is that I'm writing. Just comes out of me. That's not true now, because we work very hard at it. But I try to stay away from getting into it because a lot of people believe me. I get a lot of, oh, you poor thing, and people come up. I've had people shaking my hand and consoling me, and I'm going, listen, I'm perfectly fine. I'm perfectly happy. There's nothing wrong. But people think this. People think you're a trauma case sometimes.
I know they do. They think, oh my gosh, last week, 15 members of his family passed away from some terrible thing, and this week he lost his 20 cats because whatever you're writing about. Oh my, that is really great
Treat it
insight.
as fiction. That's it.
Treat it as fiction.
Enjoy it and treat it as fiction.
I'm
Glenn?
thinking that Glenn's point partly is though we poets, I think, kind of get this because we read a lot of poetry, and like I'm thinking of Phil Levine, who's some of his poems seem so real, but they couldn't possibly be real because there's such odd situations and stuff. But he made it all up. He's like a great storyteller, fiction storyteller in poetry. But it's a family and friends, people who read maybe back in the day when they read Rod McEwen or something. I mean, they don't read enough poetry that's edgy to get the idea that it's not true. And how do you tell them? I mean, how do you explain this to your family? Except to say that wasn't true. Sorry, I apologize. That if I upset you. I think it's a great question.
Well, that's the other thing.
Well
Absolutely. And I think you hit on something important there because it's not just them empathizing with you if you write about something sad, but they could be offended. They might think you're writing about, like I have this crazy sister and yada, yada, yada. And then your sister comes along and says, how dare you? Hey, I wasn't writing about you. Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why writers adopt pen names. Because anytime you're writing anything, you're creating a persona, and the way to just eliminate that is to create a whole persona, including a brand new name. That's I talked to a writer friend at the writers conference last summer, and she went to she saw a production of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and I forget the actor, may have been I forget the actor's name, who was playing Big Daddy, and she was so taken by the performance, she waited around at the stage door along with a bunch of other people, and he came out in his sweatshirt and his jeans and everything. And she said, when I saw him, I realized I didn't want to meet him, the actor. I wanted to meet Big Daddy, and I think that's a problem with all art to a greater or lesser degree. So I would say, Glenn, just, pick out a great nom de plume, and
There you go.
you'll never get that,
That's an
anymore.
option. Okay, well, thank you all for chiming in. That was a fun conversation, and I hope that we all get many more in this lifetime together. We're going to kick off things with Dennis Malsby.
For no good reason, I was thinking of my son today, and that reminded me of a poem I wrote about him, which was the first poem that I had published, and it was published in North American Review. And when it first went in, the editor wouldn't accept it. He sent it back and said the ending wasn't good enough. Could I punch that up? So I rewrote it and sent it back in. And of course, that's wonderful when an editor gives you some feedback, and instead of just giving you a form letter, rejecting the piece. Since then, it's appeared in Near Death, Near Life, which was my first book of poetry, edited by Glenn Lyvers, published by Prolific Press. And it's also appeared in English language version of a Chinese poetry journal called Terracotta Typewriter. So this poem about my son. My Asian son lifts weights. Black cast iron discs ring together with each of his curls, a musical beat in 4/4 time. On the TV, a PBS crew explores the ancient Qin Emperor's tomb, an army of terracotta soldiers arranged there on parade. The cameras do profiles, pans, and close-ups, statues, thin-lipped faces, high cheekbones, and Asian eyes. On the screen, my son's reflected image animates the molded faces as if he had been the model for the 2,000-year-old sculpted clay. The empty shells clutch life, brows lift, black eyes shine again, gray powdery cheeks flush to tan, lips part and nostrils flare. Finished with his sets, a red hibiscus silk shirt pulled over his head, my son strides from the house. In his silvered sunglasses, shields flash, banners wave, 10,000 warriors bow.
Excellent. And do you have another?
No, sir, just one today.
Just one today. Very, very nice. Okay, now we're going to move on to Debbie. Debbie Walker Lass. I think we're having technical difficulties. Come back to her in a couple of minutes. Gloria Caviglia, please.
Okay, I have a quick haiku. It's called In Punxsutawney. He stops, hesitates. The crowd waits, anticipates. He sees his shadow.
Okay, and those short ones, we usually read them twice if you have that.
Do you want me to read it again? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah. Yes,
Oh,
please.
okay. Okay. He stops, hesitates. The crowd waits, anticipates. He sees his shadow.
That's nice. It's just through Punxsutawney. Did you have another one?
It's a short story, but it's very short.
Sure.
It's called Shake Your Bonbon. Oh, and just as a disclaimer, I'm Catholic, so I hope it doesn't bring any bad feelings towards the religion. He couldn't have been more than 25 years old, Latin, good-looking, confident. The minute he walked in, I caught my breath and blushed. He sauntered right past me with those tight Latin buns poured into Sergio Valente jeans, and I blushed deeper. Christ Almighty, why are you doing this to me? And in church of all places. I tried to gain my composure and put on my holy God, we praise thy name face, when I noticed that he entered the vestibule. Now, why the hell would he be going in there? That's where the pastor, Father Schwartz, was right at this very moment, putting on his vestments to say Mass. I really didn't care for Father Schwartz. He was tall and hovered over you when he talked, and I hated that because he had bad breath and white stuff gathered at the corners of his mouth. Anyway, as I tried to shake off my not so holy thoughts, the bell rang, signaling the entry of the celebrant and the start of Mass. We all stood up. The choir began their drone of "Now Thank We All Our God," and as I look up, who's coming down the aisle but the Latin lover in priest robes behind the altar boys? My heart is pounding and my ears are burning. I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. Why is this guy ungluing me? I can hear myself reciting the prayers. Thank God I know them because my eyes are blurry and I'd never be able to read from the daily worship missal. As we sit down as a unit after the gospel, Mr. Sexy Latin goes to the pulpit and begins. Some people come to Mass but are unable to embrace the goodness of the Lord. Now I'm upright in the pew and all burning ears. He speaks the perfunctory 7 minutes as to not bore the churchgoers, but I've already made up my mind. A priest who gives the sermon should be young, sexy, good-looking, and Latin. Amen.
Oh, that was great. That was great. Okay, Lynette Esposito, please.
Hello.
Hi, Lynette.
This is Lynette Esposito from Mount Laurel, New Jersey. It's overcast here. We don't have sunshine again, but it is New Jersey after all. I guess that's what it is. I have a couple poems. In my dead mother's house, I keep looking above the refrigerator where my mother kept her yellow octagon-shaped clock for the time. It hasn't been there for many years, yet when I want to know the hour, I look there, as if things stay the same, as if certain points and places do not change, as if she were still alive, giving advice and criticism. Strange snakes slither through the mind, making amends for little guilty transgressions, swallow memories, eat names of friends and cousins, strangle thought, expose a stark clarity to reality. I look inward and see the past replayed with vivid lucidity in present time. Yet, when I want to know the time, I look at an empty wall. That's it.
Wow, that
I
was
didn't know which one to read, and now I'm changing my mind. I want to read Barn Cats. Is that okay?
you may read whatever you like.
All righty. I just like this poem. I like cats. That's I can't help it. I like them. Barn Cats. They come because you come, tails high like flags, eyes bright like yours, with the hope they will all return. Saucers in hand, you bend and speak softly. Where's Benny? You set the saucers down and fill them. Muffin, Queenie, Jacob, and Carl each find their spot. Hunger brings them, and you watch, crossing your fingers for the one who didn't come. These are just barn cats, you tell yourself, and yet you wait, one empty saucer unfilled. You call Kitty, Kitty, as if Benny would understand your need to feed him. But silence, and you have a busy day. You can't spend your time waiting for a hungry cat. And yet you do, hoping.
Very nice. You took me there. I have to say, I liked it. Okay, Edward Ahern, please.
I'm going to share screen here. I would hope that the first poem is treated with the solemnity and awe to which it so clearly deserves.
Here we go.
Oh, host has disabled screen sharing.
Oh, give me just one moment. I apologize for that. There you go.
Okay, here we go. This is called Signs and Wonders. We need a charismatic movement for skeptics seeking fulfillment in negative signs and wonders. A few of many signs. Charitable giving is mostly humble brag. We don't know or love our neighbor. Hate-filled gullibility is doing ever better. A few of many wonders. The lies and cupidity of politicians are omnipresent. Marriage is a 40% guarantee of divorce. There are always at least 3 active wars. Join the ecstatic legion of the dubious.
Nice. Did you have another?
I do. This one's a little different in tone. It's called Fireplace. I burn the droppings of trees and the sawed down corpses from their accidental deaths, not so much for their heat as for the beauty of their pyre and the aroma of their growths given off in their deaths, hoping they are pleased with my tribute.
Very nice. Always strong. Thank you, Edward. You know, it's that first piece that you did when you said that there's a 60% chance of divorce. It just brought this funny memory that I'll share about that anybody look at this TikTok thing? I don't know if anybody goes on there. People upload little videos. This guy uploaded this video that really kind of took me. I'm talking while Debbie Walker-Lass is getting her seat back. Anyway, this guy goes out and I mean, it might be true, it might not be true, but it's framed in such a way that we are to believe that he's interviewing young people about, you know, what percentage do you put into a relationship? And all the young people said, relationships are 50-50. You know, everybody's equal and you have to, you have to be 50-50 on everything. Otherwise, it's not going to work and such. And then he goes and he talks to older people and he says, the same exact phrasing of the question, what percentage do you put into relationships? And the older people that he showed said, you have to give 100%, 100%. If you don't give 100% of yourself to your spouse, it'll never work. And they give 100% to you. There's no such thing as 50-50. You can't love halfway. You have to give it all you have for it to work. And it was really, really interesting. And that's popped into my head 3 or 4 times. It's weird how these social media things start buzzing in your head and it makes you think, Okay. Sorry for the aside, but it was just so interesting to me. Okay, James Bethel, please.
I think I unmuted. There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we started out talking about rain and snow and misery and weather and all that, and I've just kind of extended that. I've got 2 poems. One from the Valentine stretch and befitting the winter theme. This is entitled Mid-Afternoon Valentine. Midwinter afternoon hike. Halfway around the neighborhood, earbuds blazing afternoon delight by the Starlight Vocal Band. Remember them? Sunlight as only mid-afternoon winter contains it. Stopped mid-hike, watching a couple holding hands, strolling, lost in their mid-20s reveries. Their eternal journey only halfway into this mid-winter afternoon delight. And here in Okie land, as I said earlier, we're in our transition from winter into spring. And I wrote this morning, so it's still in progress. I'm not all that together on it, but I'll give it a shot. The title of it at the moment is When It Rains, It Should Be raining. There are at least 10,000 things, and most all have a voice of some kind. Most of them, though, can't be specified or enumerated on a spreadsheet. That said, it was you I heard this morning just at sunrise. There were 17 of you, but you flew as one, all of us headed for the heron pond, talking, it seemed, about the day ahead. Wonderments about your cousins, the frogs, barking like neighborhood dogs at your graceful, noisy arrival. Sometimes I've heard you whispering in the leaves and grasses. And once, all at the same time, your thunder announcing that rain was about to speak. Thank you, guys.
I like the leaves and grasses line a lot.
Oh, yeah.
It really pulled me in there. And first I thought it was going to be more of a like a stoic sort of poem, but great, really, really nice. Okay, Debbie, can we hear you? You have to unmute yourself.
Hey, I'm so glad to be back.
Welcome back.
Wow, technology nightmare. I mean, my phone would not present any volume no matter what until I turned it off and turned it back on. And at the same time, my internet went out. So, gee, it's one of those days.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I have three little, they're only 50 word. Is that okay, Glenn? 3 50-word stories, and the theme was yard sale. And so I kind of wrote them linked. The first one is called Magpie. Some called her a hoarder. I prefer to remember my late mother as a magpie. She stopped for roadside shiny things, gleamed through the window of the boat, her ancient Continental. Let's put it in the trunk, she'd say, handing me a hush bauble. The boat and I always complied. Okay, the second one is called The Reckoning. Hi, Dad, I muttered, pajamming through his 6 a.m. coffee-laced smoke. Get a cup, I need your help, he replied. Minutes later, we crouched next to the boat, her front tire pancake flat. Let's get all the crap out of the trunk and maybe we'll find the spare, he said. And the third one is Guts. Mom always liked to sleep in on Saturday, and I hoped and prayed this one wouldn't be an exception. Head hanging heavy with betrayal, I patted the boat, the guts of her trunk on full display across our dirt yard. Her only vice was being inanimate. What was my excuse? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back too. I appreciate that. That was pretty fun. I like that how they all sort of work together.
Thanks.
It's nice. Michael Watterson, please.
Thank you, Glenn. I'd like to read a couple of things. The first one is the title poem from my collection, Cosmology of Heaven and Hell, that came out last year. Excuse me while I adjust my eyesight. After a man orbited Earth, Atlas rockets launched my new catechism, Astronomy. I asked Sister Margaret if she believed in life on other planets, since the heavens go on forever. Shaking her head, waving her ruler, she admonished, remaking God's creation is the sin of pride. Pointing out Galileo put us in our place, I wondered if wandering such vastness alone made her lonely. Magnified cloudy orbs bored into me as she intoned, God makes us lonely, so we will turn to him. That night, I turned to a telescope where shimmering Venus lures me, Lucifer in Latin, sulphurous, hot siren, transiting Virgo, one-time queen of Hades, now ordained Queen of Heaven, ascendant in the season of rebirth. As Jupiter suffers his endless red wound, Saturn the headache of an icy halo, and Pluto exile to the frozen circle beyond my lens power, where the sun dims to one more lonely star, and even a nun might feel sundered from her God. And this one is actually, I think I want to, Sean mentioned something that talking about all we have is the moment. And I wrote, there's a short poem in here called The Present, if I can find it. Here it is. The present, slice of unkept life, winking gift, always arriving unoccasioned, coming as it goes, between before and before. This drop in memory's stream, oblivion's ocean, permanent address of transience, death. Thanks.
Thank you. Both good pieces. I really like that first one. That was pretty neat.
My Catholic upbringing, as someone else mentioned, I think.
There you go. All right, just want to kind of go through a couple of notes here. I'm going to read my second piece, which is very short, from my forthcoming collection, Nothing to Do with Me. Just kidding. So the order here is Francis Levin, Peter Uremko, Sean O'Connor, Robert Whalen, and then Doug Lanzo. If you didn't hear your name, send me a note. And let me share my screen so that you can be with me. This is a really short piece. I wrote this this week, called Lost Together. Gone are those days when I was led by the hand. The strength of a father could do anything. And I, unsure and unsteady, trusting and in awe, followed. Dad's winter has come, settling into his mind, into his very bones, and he is losing his way. And it has all changed so much that we are now lost together, both leading and following, to the end of his winter and the beginning of mine. Thank you. Appreciate that, guys and ladies. Okay, Francis.
Greetings, everybody. I just wanted to note I'm not very good at chatting, but I really, really, really appreciate all your work. And this is one of the best times of the month for me always. The first poem I'm going to read is I Am Not March. I had originally decided to scrap this because it seemed to be a bit edgy, but then we had that discussion at the beginning of the program about whether it's you or Memorex. And I decided to read it. It's been published in Beyond Words Literary Magazine. I am not March. Did you think that the tree, in losing its leaves to the Delilah winds of autumn, has also lost its strength? Do you believe that 40 years of standing against the gale has lessened its resolve? Is the spring bear less fierce for its silent winter respite? In the nights of long knives and the days of wolves, where the shadows call for lions, there is no place for lambs. That's a lot of people ask me, who are you fighting with? And I said, well, it's about March and it's about Caesar and it's a little bit about me. So I'm not fighting with anyone. The second poem is a bit more upbeat. Winter's sense of spring was one of those revelations that sneaks up on you in the middle of the night. The ones where you sit bolt upright in bed and wonder, what the hell is wrong? After several seconds, it hit me. My dreams were filled with old people. Old people, not a young person to be seen. A sure sign that, like it or not, I'm old. I shifted my brain into neutral and back to sleep. Old people are good at that. I awakened to a pastel blue sky shining through the upper window. This benign sliver of firmament spoke of bluebirds, buttercups, and spring. and I knew that outside the lower blinds was the cold reality of Old Man Winter. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for for sharing that piece, you know. I mean, we write them so people will see them and hear them, and there's no better time than when they hear it from us, right? Uh, that's how I feel. I love it when I hear a piece that I published for somebody, and then I get to hear the actual writer or poet, read it. Sometimes it just blooms, it's just fantastic. Peter, your IMCO, please.
Thanks, Glenn. This must be the Catholic hour because I've got a Catholic poem too, titled "But for Carthusians." Carthusians are the oldest Catholic monastic order, about 1,000 years old, and they're the only order of monks that has never had to reform itself. They've always been incorrupt. They've always been clean. But for Carthusians, death is the point. Their cloisters, as they have for 1,000 years, circle their cemeteries by design. Unlike warriors of Flanders fields, these fallen war against a fallen angel. Eternally sleepless himself, he gives them no rest, coursing their souls day by day. No matter they rise each midnight to sing their affection for their Lord. In cold cells, in chill chapel, there's no escaping the thermal breath of the serpent. He slides along stone floors, creeping over discalced feet, slithering up the folds of sacred vestments to deliver relentless fantasies. You shall not die, but be like gods. The fork-tongued Paul, they do die, then enfolded in the habit that was their common dress in life, prayer-etched faces stitched behind ivory cowls. Finally freed from their tormentor, they take eremitic rest in shallow graves, row upon row. Nothing but a chalky white cross marks them above. Neither casket nor crypt, no name, no date, nothing upon nothing their legacy. They yield to maggot and worm, better than to lie prostrate at Lucifer's throne. Soon enough, they're reduced to a bag of brittle bones. No one's remembered sons but God's. That's my daughter calling. I'm right on cue. And the other one is called The Horizon. The horizon reminds her of God, simply there without meaning until she recognizes it, wonders about it, approaches it, only to find she cannot touch it, for it recedes before her always, like fairy gold at rainbow's end. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's interesting to see all the Catholic touches today. We're not a Catholic organization, and this was just coincidental today. It's funny that we had this conversation at the top of the event about what people believe when they read stuff. And I have to say, we publish a lot of poems about all different people from all different beliefs and things like that. And when I read a Buddhist poem, I take on the persona of a Buddhist reader. I try to be a Buddhist in that moment, at least for the purposes of reading that poem, so that I can immerse myself in that energy and judge the poem based on the quality of the work and not my personal belief about what uh, if it's good poetry or it's not good poetry. And I just think it's great. And I do that with Native American poems and even feminist works and things. I wear all kinds of different hats as a reader, and I encourage people to do that. And when you hear a great poem like Peter's that is so sort of immersed or dripping with the beauty of his personal belief, then we take that on and we absorb it, and in that way the poet imparts to us some of his feelings and emotions and helps us to come to that, and then we move on to the next poem and there's something else. And I just want to say how powerful that is, and I really enjoy that. Thank you, Peter, for bringing that. This is a safe place for all of that kind of stuff. Sean O'Connor.
Hi, everybody. Well, having heard what you just said, this is going to throw the spiritual cat among the pigeons. So I'll just read it. This is recently accepted for publication in Presence in Britain. It's called The Oak King. A high one, by the way. The Oak King. This is the day of pre-dawn gathering to witness long light reach into the tomb, as it has for millennia, to warm the bones of our dead. This is the zenith of battle between the Oak King and the Holly King, the kings of light and darkness, the day the Holly King, champion of night, succumbs to the challenge of light. This is the point of pivot, the slow turn around the fulcrum of the world, from where shadows start to shorten, light to last longer, spirits stir in their slumber, the silence starts to whisper. This is the birth of song. Winter solstice, a holly wreath on his grave in the starkest light. Thank you. And this second one is a short high one called Close, accepted for publication as well in Canada somewhere. Close. There was always one on the windowsill above the sink in our little bathroom. To the left, a bottle of sorts, not glass but a light metal, smooth, off-white, with a discreet logo in a light bluey grey, elegant and simple. Beside it, always, his metal razor. It looked complicated, the razor, hefty, mechanical, opened by turning a knurled part at the base of its handle. New mown grass, how I long to smell it, my father's aftershave. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I love the sense of the way the senses, you brought so many senses into that. You know, we can see cut grass and we can smell, it's almost like I could smell your father's cologne, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's fantastic. Good job, Sean. Okay, Gary's not going to read, and we're going to go to Robert Whalen, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm a recovering Catholic, but my sponsor tells me I'm not supposed to do anything, so I'll leave those poems hidden under the sink. Today, I've got one called Mechanical Quality. Perhaps others here have aftermarket parts, and then maybe a couple of haiku, if that's okay. So, mechanical quality. I'm starting to feel mechanical, but that doesn't make sense. Machines don't feel. Yet here I ride on a collection of systems that are more than the sum of their parts. Bellows operate air intake through channels, making the outside inside, where it becomes me. Same with the fuel system, where one life transmutes, becoming another life. Again, through channels that allow the outside energy to be extracted inside, the leftover waste expelled, becoming the outside again. The boundary between out and in is a flexible, self-repairing bag stretched over scaffolding, mobilized by electronically controlled, expanding and contracting cords, coordinated by a hardwired central processor with manufacturer-installed firmware. The optics consist of a wavelength-triggered semi-automatic rangefinder system, generating chemical transmissions, rendering pattern recognition. The dawn bleeds. Hot coal yellows to reds, purples to blues. Cool air dances across the rippling grass, awakened green, whispering the scent of wildflowers. Loons call across a misty lake. An open road flows of freedom. The orange tastes so sweet. Thank you. And I've been trying to do at least a haiku a day. So if I can read some recent ones. It is cold and snowy here, okay? Along the shore road, icy winds charge from the sea, chasing away breath. Along the shore road, icy winds charge from the sea, chasing away breath. Dirty snowbanks, gutters brim with meltwater, splashing muddy boots. Dirty snowbanks, gutters brim with meltwater, splashing muddy boots. And the last one, a silent white landscape until the scratching of snowplows exposes black asphalt. A silent white landscape until the scratching of snowplows exposes black asphalt. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Very, very nice. Okay, and our final reader, Doug Lanzo, please.
Thank you very much.
Oops, I'm sorry, Doug. I muted you. I apologize.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to start by saying I feel really blessed this year by the reception my novel, The Year the Bear, has gotten. Readers of all ages have enjoyed that. So recommend that for anyone who wants to check it out.
Great.
And
When you
also,
come
yeah.
by our Facebook page and drop a I'll post this video later today. Come by and post a link in the comments there so we can
Okay.
follow that
Sure.
if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, great. Also really blessed. Enjoy writing all types of poetry from haiku, tanka to traditional hybrid. And this year, for whatever reason, it's exploded quite a bit with 14 journal publications and anthology just in the last month and a half. So that's been good to see. But wanted to share two totally different poems today. One, I don't consider it a political poem, but it's in honor of Tyree Nichols in his memory. And unsolicited, I learned it was shared with his family by one of his family lawyers. It was quite an honor just to hear that. So I'll start with that one, called "Remembering Tyree While Processing the Pain." Taking in a lake park sunset, its embers flickering cross sky, capturing its serenity and photos enchanting the eye. That he would share over dinner sesame chicken with his mom, whom he loved without condition, her name tattooed with great aplomb. On his arm that would be handcuffed, stomach down, tased, and pepper sprayed, whose name he would call out 3 times, that his life might be spared, he prayed. His cries unheard, his mom yet cooked, a mere half-mile from where he laid. A gentle man who had a smile and friendly word for everyone. A skateboarder who landed tricks, cherished heel flips thrown in for fun. Put down with cruel barbarity, boot kicked and pummeled in the face. Bereft of their humanity, officers acted with disgrace, in contrast to the dignity of his green family in pain, calling for justice for a Tyree to prosecute that peace may reign, praying for all the families, even for those blemished with a stain of taking their precious son's life, healing injustice, their refrain. And the second one is called to Heed the Void of Glaciers. It was published in Founders Favorites in January of this year. Those who have experienced the wild, remote, and pristine beauty of Patagonia say that its vast glaciers, towering peaks, echoing valleys, and joyful whistles of shepherds, gauchos, and bacaneros, pathfinders who have blazed its mountains on sure-footed criollos for centuries, transforms your soul, tenderizing it like fresh papaya leaves, gently wrapped around a beef fillet, harmonizing it with the rugged and extreme nature that you experience each waking moment around each mountain pass. Yet a central element of it is dying, its spirit and unlocked secrets vanishing each day into droplets and streams that flow into mighty rivers that wind their course into the sea, glaciers carving their own trail of tears from pristine blue compressed sky embedded into ice through weight of ancient mountain snows seasoned by the passage of time. Though it may seem spectacular in the moment to witness a mighty slab of glacier break off and vault tons of sky blue ice toward mountain slope, it is in truth a tragic moment, the tremored sound of its shearing, a distressed cry to the ears of our souls, for man to change course to preserve what yet remains of the fast diminishing fields of Patagonia's 626 glaciers before they melt into a sea of dreams.
I was muted. Thank you for that, Doug. And thank you everybody for coming to the February event. Smaller month, smaller group, I guess that's okay. I hope that I see you all again. Sean, tell Mary Gunn we miss her.
I will. I'll ring her tonight.
Oh, I need to turn off the recording. We'll see you all next month.